All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Quill and Hammer. I'm Trevor. This is Zach. And Zach, tell us what we're doing today.
So we wanted to do something a little more relevant. We've typically been doing films, reforging films, and other material that is rather old, things in the past that we wish we had changed. Today we're going to be doing something much more relevant, and that is one of Marvel's more recent entries into their expansive timeline, Captain America: Brave New World. Came out in May, I believe, of this year. And today we're going to be talking about what was good, what was bad, and what we think needs to be changed. So, Trev, give me your general thoughts on the movie. What did you think?
All right, so I want to preface this by I've only watched Spider-Man since Endgame. So I have no
Sure.
idea what's going on. I guess I did watch like WandaVision 3 years ago, but I haven't seen any of the stuff since then. I don't really know what's going on. So with that in mind, Um, my expectations were quite low, and for that reason, I think I really enjoyed the movie.
You
Uh,
know, I actually enjoyed it quite a bit as well. There are things that I disliked about it, but it was a pretty good film.
as far as movies go, like it hit all of the things for me. I mean, it had a good plot. I um, I mean, I really like Anthony Mackie as Sam. I think that was awesome. I
Hmm.
think he does a really good job. I liked whoever the new Falcon is, and I can't remember his name.
Joaquin is the character's name. I
What
don't know the actor's name.
right? I like Joaquin. I think he was a very fun character and kind of a
Hmm.
breath of fresh air a little bit. Um, and to be honest, as a standalone alone film, I was like, this is really good. I was interested the entire time. I didn't, you know, and roll my eyes too often. I thought it was good. I thought it was good enough that I didn't feel like I wasted 2 hours watching it, which sometimes is not the case with Marvel movies.
That's true.
So it was a win for me. I liked, and I know you are gonna touch on this too. I specifically liked the scene where uh Bucky comes in and is talking to Sam. And I can't remember how he said it, but what did he say? You and I talked about this briefly.
So one of the things that Bucky says, Sam is having a hard time viewing himself as Captain America. He feels like he can't live up to Steve, right? And Sam or Bucky comes in and he says, Steve gave people something to believe in. You give them something to aspire to. And he's talking about how he doesn't have the super serum, how he's just a regular guy who has worked his butt off, put in the dedicated training, and it's something that people can aspire to. And I thought that was so good. It sets apart Steve's Captain America from Sam's Captain America in a really, really important way. And just to keep going off of that, I love Sam as Captain America. He he has the right heart and the right attitude to be Captain America, and mixing the shield with the Falcon suit, and it's got vibranium and that repulsion power. He's freaking awesome. I love Sam as the new Captain America.
I went into this skeptical, and I don't know why I thought, I don't know if I can get behind him. Like, I guess the thing is it's hard to imagine anyone other than, you know, Captain America as Captain America.
Right.
What's his name? Chris Evans. I
Chris
get up,
Evans,
yeah.
Steve Rogers.
Chris Evans and Steve Rogers. I get the Chris's mixed up, and so that's why I hesitate saying the names. But
Hmm.
Chris Evans as Steve Rogers was fantastic. He did such a good job, and that's why it was hard to think, why are they even doing this? Why? I mean, I know they set it up in Endgame, but why are we doing this?
Hmm.
And I was pleasantly surprised. I agree with you. I think Sam um is a great Captain America. So that put my whatever's my fears or my apprehension to rest because they did a good job writing him. And it's kind of like the sequel problem that we have in movies that you and I talked
Right.
about. It's like how do you take the essence of what made Captain America great and move it into another person or whatever and not have it just be some parody of Steve Rogers. And I think they did a great job taking where Sam was and his exact character and amplifying that into Captain America rather than just trying to copy Steve. Again, like
Well,
Bucky said in that scene.
right. And I agree with that. One of the things that I loved about the movie and, about the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, that this is kind of the sequel to that series, which I don't think you've seen.
Mm-mm.
But, you know, Sam's whole thing is, he doesn't feel like he can live up to Steve, right?
Right.
And um one of the things that I love is that character arc, feeling inadequate and still doing what's right and giving it your best. You know what I mean? And another thing that I liked at the end, when Joaquin's in the hospital bed and Sam's talking to him and he talks about how he always has to be on point, and there's big responsibility there. And I like seeing the stress that that puts on Sam's character, because it's real. We all have those stresses. We have the stress of going to work every day and stress of taking care of your spouse, your kids, whatever it is, and it makes him feel like a real person, and that's what I like about Sam versus Steve, because Steve, like Bucky says, I mean, I know I keep going back to it, but it was such a great line. Steve was something to believe in. He was a mythical figure, but Sam is something that we can all be. And so for that reason, I really, really liked his character arc and the internal struggles that he has.
I agree. And the idea that a normal person can be a superhero. I like that. It's the same reason that draws us to Spider-Man.
Exactly.
Um, is that and I think we're talking Tom Holland and gosh, what's his name? Why can't I think of Andrew Garfield's Spider-Mans where they have to use their brain to create the spider fluid and all of the stuff, and it's like they're just normal guys who work really hard and do what they can, and that's the same thing with Sam. You work really hard, make the best of what life has given you, and you do incredible things. And that's
Right.
what we can all do. So now I feel like we're beating that horse very thoroughly. But great. I mean, it bears repeating, and that's why we talk about it. But let's
Right.
let's shift gears, Zach. What didn't you like?
Okay. So there are a couple of things that I didn't like. Um, First, let me say that I loved the villain. I don't even know if he has a name. I'm sure he does, but I'm not invested enough into the comics or anything to recognize who this guy is. But Steve Stearns, was that his name?
I
Something
think
like
so,
that.
yeah.
Um, the gamma head guy.
Right.
I thought that was a really cool villain. What I didn't like was that they found him so easily and he didn't get a whole lot of, not necessarily screen time, but he didn't have like all these different machinations that the heroes had to foil, and this is just a personal thing, but I would have liked to see more of a chase. It's like he's causing more chaos. He had two plans. Plan number one was to um, have Japan and the United States go to war, and plan number two was to make Harrison Ford's character turn into the Red Hulk. Right?
Right.
Those were his two things. I would have liked to see more chaos being caused,
Right.
and blaming it on the president and that sort of thing, and more of a chase. It's like Sam and Joaquin are constantly on the tail of this guy, and he keeps foiling them because of his ability to, work out the probabilities of things.
Right.
I feel like, I guess my point is, I feel like the villain was wasted. He has this really cool power of, it feels like he can predict the future because he works in probabilities, right? But they kind of wasted it, you know. I like the idea of the mind control with the flashing lights. That's an interesting idea. And the subplot with Isaiah being framed, I loved that. And the conflicts there, I thought that was a good thing to have in, but I wanted more from this villain. I wanted it to seem like he was predicting the future, and they couldn't stop him because he knew every move they were going to make, and they had to get creative about how are we going to subvert his expectations and beat the probabilities. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like almost like a, I don't know, like a Joker type of villain. You pit him against two things. You can save this person or you can save this person. And I predict a 90% probability you'll save this one,
Right.
but I'm over here, that kind of thing, right? Like I want more. I don't even know what to call it, but I wanted more of that. I just
More
felt,
mastermindness.
yes, machinations,
Yes.
mastermindedness. I wanted more from him because he's a cool villain. I love that kind of idea.
Right.
He's infected with gamma radiation, but instead of becoming the Hulk, he becomes super minded Hulk, and
Right.
like it's such a cool idea, but I feel like they wasted it. That's my one of my big problems. I'll let you respond to that before I continue rambling.
Okay, so during the movie when I was watching it, I wasn't thinking along those lines. I get what you were saying. I felt like there was enough going on that it you didn't need a full huge character, but I did not like but sorry, let me go back. I think if I were to have done this, I would have done something different than the mind control, or maybe not different, but I would have added something to it, added some prerequisite. Like I kept thinking, and granted, having not seen any of the stuff, they keep talking about Isaiah being in prison for 30 years and experimented on and all of these things. And I was thinking they had to have had some implant or some conditioning or something that they did that made these people vulnerable. And I thought if President Ross, what was his name?
Ross, yep, that's his name.
I thought if President Ross was behind that and this guy was tapping into it, that would have been just another element of, you know, Ross is just the same power hungry, uh,
It would have
whatever guy
added,
that he is his entire life.
right, added to the
And
bad things that he's done type
all of the
deal.
bad things that he has done and look at this and I'm not really doing anything. I'm just tapping into what he's already done. I
Right,
I kept expecting that to come up or that these soldiers were happening it or like there was something that needed to take place before, but I don't like the idea that just by looking at your phone like and a couple of flashes go off then you're just screwed if you
right.
and so I thought there needed to be something else, or like. some, I don't know, some trigger that allows you to do that, but that didn't really get explained to my satisfaction, I guess. But then it's
Okay,
like, okay, well, what about Sam? Sam's just a normal guy. You could do the same thing to Sam. Why, you know, how do they do it to the pilots? Like I felt like it was just let's use mind control. That's a thing, you know. Let's try
right.
spinning. That's a good trick.
I can understand that. I don't have an explanation for how they got to the pilots. That seemed strange, unless it happened off screen.
Right. Well,
Um,
well, like go back to the Echo One base. That's not what it was called.
it
The
was
It was something, wasn't it?
yeah, it was Echo, something Echo.
But in my mind,
Anyway,
Echo One base is Star Wars again, right?
it
This
feels
is
like it.
Echo One. Anyway,
Anyway,
let's not get on Star Wars again. We've done probably 3 months of content on that. Marvel. But like on the wall, okay? When you go in there and he's got all of those pictures on the wall.
right,
And that's why I kept waiting for them to explain that like there was something that happened that like they got to these people.
right.
But and maybe they did, maybe there's a story behind there or like a deleted scene or something that explains it a little bit, but to me that was a mistake because then you're sitting there thinking who else could be involved? Um, what how do you get triggered? And to me it seems the only thing that happens is he hacks into your phone and you look at it and you're like, my phone's on the fritz. And then that's it. So,
I mean, that's what it looks like. It's just a pattern of flashing lights that has the ability to control people. And I mean, and I'm kind of with you, if that's all it takes, why didn't he mind control Sam? Why didn't he
yeah,
mind control the president himself? Yeah, I don't know. Um, so yeah, I get that. And I don't know what you would do. It would take some actual, writing, which sometimes I don't know that Marvel always does, but um and I mean, I'll give Marvel a little bit of the benefit of the doubt because they are adapting essentially comic books, right?
right,
And the thing with comic books is they don't always have to make sense,
right.
and like there are conflicting timelines. And I mean, how many times has I actually don't know because I don't read comic books, but my understanding is that X-Men has been rebooted about 1,000 times, and so has Spider-Man, and all these things get rebooted, and there are different timelines, and trying to make them cohesive into a single film universe, I'm sure is difficult, but it does feel like the flashing lights was a little bit lazy.
It does. And maybe we'll have to explore this a bit in the reforging stage, but like a little explanation goes a long way.
It's true.
And that's my only complaint is like just throw something in. It doesn't matter if it's I mean, we are already suspending reality to the point where aliens exist and superheroes and all of these things. We're just looking for a reason to believe. And
Right.
so that's the bare minimum is to say, oh yeah, well, there's a certain subclass of people that are susceptible to this, or a blood type, or you know, there was
Something.
this something, if they were exposed to certain gamma rays, then we can do it, or I don't know. But anyway, let's shelve that for a second. What else was off to you?
So the other thing, my other biggest thing, and some people might say this isn't important, but I think that it is. And that was the cinematography was horrible. I'm just gonna come right out and say it. It was awful. There were no like there was no beautiful filmography. I'm not quite sure I'm explaining it well enough, but it was extremely obvious that they used green screens like 98% of the time. And I get that you have to do that in these kinds of films, but it was so obvious. Like the green screen work, the CGI, it was kind of garbage, you know? And it was enough that it was like breaking immersion for me.
Hmm.
One specific point. And some of them I'm like, these are just bad decisions, you know? When Sam is trying to reason with the Red Hulk at the very end, it, it has that frame of Sam, but what's behind him? Concrete, rubble and concrete, nothing. I mean, you could have set that up so that the beautiful bay behind him was shining and there was light coming up. You know what I mean? But no, it's concrete, rubble, nothing. And it's just like, it wasn't inspiring, and this is sort of not to get back into Star Wars, but this is kind of a flip-flop from my problem with The Last Jedi. The Last Jedi's filmography was superb. So many beautiful scenes. Everything about it was visually striking, but the story was absolute garbage.
Hmm.
Now flip that with Brave New World. Like we talked about, I liked the story. I thought it was a great film, but it was so ugly. It was an ugly film, and the I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'm not being fair here, but the CGI was bad. And I compare it to Davy Jones in, the Pirates of the Caribbean series.
Yeah.
You go back and you look at Davy Jones and that crap looks real. But then you look at the Hulk or sometimes at Sam's armor or whatever. And it's like you can see where they airbrushed it. You can see where it's like it's clay, it looks like it's not finished.
Right.
And the reason I have a problem with that is that this is not a low budget film. This is a Marvel film. You know what I mean? They should have enough money to put in enough time to make these things look good. And maybe part of the problem is they're always on a time crunch. And it's, well, we got to get this film out by this date so that we can continue, you know, expanding the timeline. And I'm like, well, I would rather you push all these things back and make it actually visually pleasing, you know?
Right.
But like I said, some people might not think that that's important, but I do because part of the film experience is seeing these beautiful landscapes, these beautiful scenes, and I just felt like there wasn't much of that. And I would be okay with that if there was a trade-off with lots of action and explosions, Michael Bay style, right?
Yeah.
But there kind of wasn't much of that either. There was the dogfight over the ocean, which
Hmm.
probably was my most favorite sequence in terms of action. And then there was the fight between Red Hulk and the Falcon, which there wasn't much to it. It
Right.
was like they had a little bit of a scuffle at the White House, and then they traded a few blows at the cherry blossoms, and then it was over. There wasn't much filmography, and that's sort of my other complaint here.
So I'll be honest, I did not notice that at all. That was not something that was even in my mind. But you say that and I can understand what you mean. But it didn't break immersion for me necessarily. Um, But I wonder, and maybe this is a little tangent, but like go back to Pirates of the Caribbean 2. And that was, I mean, what year was that? Like 2006, 2005
Like
when it
eight, I think,
I
you
can't
know.
remember. I thought At World's End came out when I was 17.
How old were you in 2008?
17. But I was thinking go back to middle one,
To
Dead
so then
Man's Chest.
probably 2006 or something like that.
Whenever that happened, the the question I have is how much of that was filmed on location versus um, green screen, I guess. Um, because I will give the whoever's the not the animators, the green screen people that take that and turn it into CGI and whatever. A lot of times as that increases, but the timelines decrease, I assume they don't have as much time where you know, you could put in, call it 200 man hours of CGI preparation if all you're doing is making Davy Jones look like Davy Jones. Um, but if everything is CGI, then you're spread way too thin and you just have to do what you have to do. And it's like, well, rather than spend time making the scene behind Sam perfect in the cherry blossoms, it's like, well, we don't have time to do that. So concrete it is because we can do that and just set it there. And then we don't have to do the ripples or any of the details or whatever. So I don't think that is necessarily the CGI capabilities that we have been diminished. In theory, they should go up. But I feel like we expect too much of people and a lot of times they use CGI as a crutch or as a, you know, I don't know what I'm trying to say, how to say it, but they don't put as much work into the physical surroundings because it's easier to CGI everything the way you want it. But then when you're doing that, it costs money, it increases things, and they spend so much time on it that they can't get the depth that you want, I think.
Well, I see what you're saying, and I'm sure that the problem is they are overstretched, overworked, and that's why, I say, well, delay the movie, or the other option is do as much as you can on location,
Right,
instead of on a green screen. It's like and like I said, I know there are things that you have to do on a green screen. They're not going to let them go and film at the White House. I understand that.
right,
But like, I don't know. I just have a problem with it. It's like and using CGI as a crutch, I think is the wrong approach. Not a filmmaker, not a special effects artist, but I feel like using it as a crutch is the wrong approach. You should and it should enhance the film, not just, well, we got to throw something in there type thing.
right. So I find myself wondering, and this is in no way relevant to the movie. This is just a thought, but like how much of a budget goes to like creating the set versus CGI? And at some point, you spent more money on the set than you do on CGI. And when did that shift? Um, because I imagine if you went back and said, okay, we've got $300 million and that's our budget for production and all of this stuff, and currently we're spending 200 million on on whatever, on the CGI and the, effects and all of that. It's like, well, what if we flipped that and made it look realistic and then, like you said, sprinkle CGI in, not as a crutch, but to enhance the things that we can't enhance. And again, it's you fall into this trap because it's a superhero movie.
Mhm.
And there are aliens, and I mean, you have to do Hulk as CGI because there's no other way to do it, right?
Right.
But to your point, you can put a lot of detail in to make Hulk look like Davy Jones, like a real character, and spend so much time on him that you don't like it doesn't break immersion. It looks natural. And the same thing with Gamma Head, whose name I don't remember. Like you can do these things and get it perfect if you just have the set looking good. And granted, again, how do you put a set together where you've got the vibranium hand coming out of the Indian Ocean?
And and I get that,
And there, I
like,
mean, there are things, and yeah, a dogfight over the ocean between two countries, like that's cool. You don't really want that to happen, but
but it's exciting.
it's exciting. And so like there are things that you need to do there. And of course, the Falcon and Sam's wings, like you jetpacks don't exist to my knowledge. Those wings, that technology is not around. So, but the point being, how do you balance it? And I don't know. I assume you should take more time and a little bit more money and either build as much as you can physical or delay the movie and get it right.
That's
Um,
that that's kind of where I am with it,
but then
you
again,
know.
let me go back to this because I talk about this too. There's like the good, better, best, and you and I talked about this last week. When we were talking about Lego Star Wars, but it's like there's you know, a vast area in between horrible and perfection. And if
Right.
we're waiting for perfection in a movie, like nothing would come out.
Right.
It would be, and so like on the one hand, it's like, hey, you and I liked the movie. Maybe, it wasn't as bad as we assumed it was going to be. I don't know if we had low expectations or what, but like we liked it. And
Hmm.
maybe that's a win, and we can complain about certain production things and like yeah, maybe it broke immersion here or there. To me, that doesn't necessarily matter as much. The fixing some of the plot points and maybe some of the action sequences and a couple things here and there that don't make sense to me would go a lot further for me than I think the cinematography at this point.
And
I
I agree, cinematography isn't my main problem here. And if that's all that I'm complaining about, then
Then they did a
it's a
pretty good
pretty
job.
okay film.
Yeah.
But it is something that I noticed. I usually don't have enough of a problem with cinematography to bring it up,
Right,
but I did think there were just poor choices made.
right,
And there was never like I don't know, maybe I'm expecting like, the hero walking to the top of a hill with the sun rising behind him after fighting all night and coming victorious,
right,
or like Gandalf coming up over the hill at Helm's Deep with the sun behind him as they rush down. Like I just didn't feel like there was a scene like that. There was
right.
nothing visually striking. That was more my point.
Okay, which I can agree with. You do need that. I mean, think of the going back to Endgame, um, when Steve summons Mjolnir
Hmm.
and it's that close up of Avengers assembled. That
Hmm.
point, like you need something like that. And even though it was dark, it was gritty, it was, but that
But it
was
wasn't
that was a striking scene. And then the same
exactly
thing with Gandalf, uh, and the light from his staff, and he's there on his horse, and then you've got, is it the Rohans? Rohirrim?
the writers of Rohan.
Riders of Rohan right there. And like again, striking scene. It evokes the emotion that you want, you
Exactly.
know? And the closest thing that you got to that, and I don't mean this negatively, is that emotional scene was when Sam and Bucky were talking. And it wasn't
Right.
necessarily striking, it was emotional, and you felt the pain. And again, at the end of the movie, when Sam and Joaquin are talking, and you
Hmm.
feel that emotion and that vulnerability, but you don't get that hope, that hopeful whatever that
Or
you
or
wish you had.
even the despair with a striking scene, like
Right.
going back to Endgame, another example is when uh I almost called him Kratos. Thanos is sitting waiting for Steve, um, Tony and Thor, right?
Yeah.
And you see the three of them kind of standing on the hill looking down at the casual, nonchalant Thanos. And then you have Thor clap and thunder comes down and he transforms from fat, drunk Thor to Norse god Thor,
Yeah.
and like those were striking scenes. Even just the quick vista of them standing on the hill and you're looking from the back and you see Thanos down there, like it doesn't give you hope, it gives you apprehension, you know what I mean? But you feel those things.
Right.
And that's why I feel like the cinematography is important, especially in a superhero film.
I I
But
I I agree with you there. I don't think I mean, I guess there are things like that that need to be sprinkled in that, like, they give, they don't really, I don't want to say add to the plot or add to the story, other than that moment of emotion. It's pure emotion that hits you. And
that's what I think is important. I actually wrote a med school essay for one of my applications about this idea. But the reason we tell stories, I mean, from the beginning of mankind, we have told stories. And why do we tell stories? To evoke emotions, right? Whether it's a scary story, whether it's an inspirational story, an exciting story, a calming story, a story to teach a principle, they evoke emotions. That's the point. The ones that you remember are the ones that make you feel something.
right,
And if you don't, that's when it feels kind of flat. It's like you're just going, it's like reading instructions.
yeah,
It's the difference between reading instructions and reading a novel.
right,
There's no emotion. You know what I mean? So I'm mildly passionate about that sort of a thing.
right. Well, I can get behind that, but let's jump ahead to, besides fixing the cinematography, what would you have changed, even if they're little things? Because like we said, we enjoyed the movie more than we thought we were.
Hmm.
But what would you have changed or added in or fixed? Let's
Okay.
reboot.
So I've talked a little bit about making Gamma Head more maniacal, more with more machinations and more,
Like,
I don't know,
yes,
plotting, right?
a little more sinister than we seemed to
Yeah,
see.
and just to show off his power.
Right.
He has an extra human power, and I would have liked to see more of that. I've already talked about that. I'm not going to keep beating it to death, the other thing I would have liked to see is more of Sidewinder, the the leader of I don't know the syndicate that's buying the vibranium or the not the
Right.
vibranium, the adamantium. And because and unless I've missed something, unless I haven't watched all of the and I haven't watched every single series. If there was something that I missed from one of the other films about who this guy is, he was kind of like just a dude, you know?
Yeah.
And I can't remember the actor's name, but he's a big deal actor.
Right. He is.
And and he I don't know, I just feel like it was sort of anticlimactic. You know, they have a little bit of a fight in the chapel down in Mexico or wherever they were,
Right.
but then they fight on the streets, which I thought was really cool. But then that was kind of it. Like there's no explanation, there's no insight into who that character is,
Right.
and maybe they're setting him up to be, and I'm sure that's what it is. They're setting him up to be a villain in a later film,
Right.
but he was kind of just a dude. I don't know anything about him, and I want to know what his motivations are,
Right.
because so I would put something like that in there. Otherwise, he's just another henchman of Gamma Brain, you know?
Right. So I had that same thought, but there's that scene where Sidewinder is talking about, did we just name him Gamma Brain or is that his real name? I can't.
I named him Gamma Brain.
All
I don't
right,
know what his
so
name
we
is.
don't know his name, and that's on us. Maybe we should have done some preparation, but Gamma Brain, I'm fine with that. So like there's that scene where he's in prison and Steve is talking to him about Gamma Brain, like what do you know or whatever, and or not Steve, Sam, excuse me. And then Sam says something and he says, "Well, when I escape, I'm going
Hmm.
to kill you." Like if that's not setting you up for Captain America, you know, Sidewinder edition, I don't know what is. Like it's a huge missed opportunity if they don't bring him in.
Right.
But again, we don't really know who he is. I don't know who he is. And and I'm gonna, you know, digress a little bit. I my problem with Marvel post Endgame is that it felt like it wasn't going anywhere, so I lost interest.
Right.
And whether that's, you know, whether that's on me or I haven't been paying attention enough or whatever, like that's Disney and Marvel have kind of dropped the ball as far as we have an idea of where we're going post Endgame, and I guess I never bought in. So if he was introduced somewhere, if there's like a mention of him or whatever, and I missed it, like that's on me, but it's also on Marvel for not, you know, making Phase 4 or whatever, you know, whatever. Because you remember Iron Man came out and it was like, wow, cool, Iron Man, and then Captain America, and then like it built into this thing,
Hmm.
and Endgame was such a big deal because we were just, you know, chomping at the bit to find out if they, you know, how they were going to get rid of Thanos and solve everything. But that left us with this huge hole. And to be honest, was anything ever going to live up to that hype to begin with? Probably not.
I don't think so.
And but we still kind of had to have something to fill the gap with, even if it wasn't going to be great.
When I think the problem with Marvel post Endgame is it suffers from the worst form of sequelitis, because it's not just a 2 hour film that you're now having a sequel to and having sequelitis of. It's a 25 film saga
Right.
that now you're trying to follow up, and it's like, well, how do you follow that up?
Right.
And do you have another galactic threat? It's like, but we already did that. So I've sort of lost interest in Marvel as well, at least to a point.
And
But
I and this is again not me being interested in Marvel necessarily because like you said, there's so much content and so many reboots and so many things that they could bring in that they don't. Just because there's so much to draw upon and so many timelines or whatever. But we had this galactic threat. I want to go back to, the most dangerous animal is a human kind of idea.
right,
So like we bring it back from galactic and we just barely survived the world and then now we've got to deal with the evil of humanity again.
right,
And I think that's more compelling. Like, because we can all be friends and we can all rally behind each other when there's a huge external threat. But when there's no external threat, we cannibalize ourselves.
right,
It's no longer Earth versus everyone else. It's now, the United States versus Japan, and you've got the Middle East, and you've got terrorists, and you've got all of these things, and there's enough evil on Earth to keep us pretty well occupied. But
right,
again, it's the plan. What is the plan? And the plan can be, well, what if there is someone on Earth who is just sick of everything and wants to destroy it all?
mhm,
You know? Or, like something. There are plans upon plans upon plans, but like you can figure out something that focuses us back on Earth. And I think that needs to be the focus to get you back in because you can keep finding, there's always a bigger fish, so to speak.
right.
And it's like, okay, well, what's next? Where do we go from here? And so my biggest complaint is the lack of a plan. And I don't remember when, and this is again, I would have to go back and watch all 25 films, but and I'm probably not going to do that, no offense to Marvel, but where does Thanos become the main threat? Like I can't remember where he comes in at. The first time I remember seeing him is Guardians of the Galaxy, but like, Hydra and all of these things and the Infinity Stones and all of the stuff like
I
when did the guy become Thanos?
I think it was I think the first time we see him is in the original Avengers film. I think it was in a post-credit scene because the point was Loki, when he's invading Earth, he was doing that on behalf of Thanos. Thanos was the one who gave him the well, I guess he didn't give him the scepter because that was anyway. But the point is he was on Earth on behalf of Thanos. And I think in a post-credit scene you see him or something like that, but for a long time he was the big bad guy that was like he was the looming shadow type deal.
Right. Well, so you need that then, and I guess it gets scattered. Everything seems just a money grab almost. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, Endgame is over. Let's do WandaVision. Let's do Loki. Let's do whatever. And I can't and you can tell how much I've paid attention. That's the extent of it. I guess there was the Multiverse of Madness thing, and now you've got
Mhm.
Fantastic Four, which we should probably watch and do at some point. But like where's it going, I think is the problem. And it's the same thing as Star Wars. It doesn't seem like, Star Wars didn't feel like it had an overall plan, and it didn't, and that is evident. But like you would think with the success of Marvel being it was building towards Endgame for so long that everyone knew it was going there, and it was a matter of how are we going to get there, right?
Mhm.
Well, I still don't know where we're going with Marvel post Endgame. And I feel like that's a hard thing to do. I mean, it was like when Avengers happened, it was like, ooh, cool, awesome. Now we have a villain, you have something, but like it doesn't feel like they've introduced anything. It just feels like, it'd be cool? Let's do a Wanda thing because Wanda's super powerful. You know what's cool? We like Loki. Let's explore Loki.
To be fair, there was a villain that they were trying to set up, and his name was Khan, and he was the villain in Loki, the first season of Loki.
Hmm.
He was a villain in Ant-Man Quantumania, and I think a third one, but they were setting him up as the next big threat. And then the actor got into some trouble,
Hmm.
like big trouble. And so they are no longer doing that. And rather than recast him, I think they just folded. It was a bad hand and they decided just to fold. So they had a plan, at least at some point. They had some semblance of a plan. And I think now maybe they're floundering a little bit. I don't know. But regardless, I don't know. I do agree with you. There doesn't seem to be cohesion at this point.
Right.
And obviously they're hinting at bringing, the mashup movies back because I mean you've got the Thunderbolts that came out recently, which we should also probably do. Um, but Ross is talking to Sam about restarting the Avengers, and Sam decides, yeah, we probably should. So things are building,
Right.
but there's not a clear direction of where it's going yet.
Which to be fair, not to be fair, but to be fair, I am more inclined to watch the next Marvel movie because we watched Brave New World.
Right.
And again, I don't know if that is because we had zero expectations coming into this.
It could be.
Um, because that's kind of where I'm at with Marvel. It's like I don't have any expectations, whatever, like, who cares? It's fine. It's gonna be fine, I guess. If a Marvel movie is on, I might watch it. But
Right.
but then again, we don't watch TV traditionally like we did growing up. So it's
Nope.
like you have to make that choice. And with all of the choices out there, why Marvel?
Hmm.
Why here again? And to be fair, what's the movie that they've like Robert Downey Jr. is back and you've got all these things.
Avengers Doomsday is what they're
Doomsday.
calling
So
it.
like when that comes back, even though it's gonna be weird seeing Robert Downey Jr. as Doom instead of Iron Man and Tony Stark, like I am intrigued enough to probably watch that. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
And so if they are going somewhere, then I can get behind it again. Um, but again, maybe I haven't been fair. Maybe I need to pay more attention. But anyway, we're getting off on a tangent. I did want to bring up one thing that I wanted to change. I
Okay.
wanted more information on all the evil things that Ross had done. Or
Okay.
that, like again, Marvel assumes that everyone has been paying attention and they haven't.
Right.
And so you kind of need that continued reminder of this is what has happened, like
Right.
little throwbacks to things here and there, because they kept saying Ross is evil, and it's like, okay, yes. But all I really know nowadays is that, at the end of the movie, he did something to Bruce Banner, and he did something, he kept Gamma Head imprisoned for 15 years with this carrot and stick thing to like keep me alive and I'll release you once I'm president or whatever. And
Hmm.
then he never does. And like all of this stuff. But I want to know all of the things. And you kind of have this like he was behind Isaiah a little bit being in
Hmm.
prison. But what else? What did he do? What made him a bad person? Why, you know, like because we can have differing opinions and I guess this is something that we forget. No one thinks they are evil
Yeah,
ever. Hitler did not consider himself as an evil person. He thought he was doing right, and that's what made him such an evil person, is he was doing all of these things for his ideological whatever, and then he could look with a clear conscience almost to say like I'm doing what needs to be done for the greater good or whatever.
right.
And so like I wanted more of that, like what did he do? Remind me of all the things that he did in the past for the greater good and now why he's old and wanting to be president so he can fix things because somewhere he had a change of heart or his daughter isn't talking to him and that makes him evaluate things or
Right.
what is making him try to change and does he really change? And at the end of the movie, you kind of answer that because after he becomes the Hulk, something that he hates, he's like, yeah, I'm going to own up to everything. I did all of these things. He voluntarily resigns and puts himself into prison and all of this stuff, like, you know, that shows that he has changed or is getting better. But like, I wanted more depth of these were some of the atrocities that he committed or
Hmm.
remember in secret he did this and this and this and this and I'm not saying that holding Gamma Head in prison for 15 years is not evil and bad or the choices that he made, but I feel like there was more that we could have said. Again, it's back to the a little tiny point here and there does wonders because it came back to Uh, he imprisoned Gamma Head. He imprisoned Sam, or not Sam, Isaiah. He did this. But it's like, if you just kept adding to that list, instead of going back and forth, if that list just keeps getting longer and longer every time you talk to someone new, I think that would have been, like, gosh, he did that too,
Hmm.
and this is the president, and we're supposed to follow him and believe that he's changing. And
I I agree. Like I like the idea of slowly eroding your perception of this person based on
right,
the past.
right.
Because, and it's such a human thing. We we look at people's past and we tend to judge them on the past
Right,
versus who they are now. And
right,
while that it is part of what makes someone that person, you can't just look at the past, you have to look at now.
right.
But to, kind of come in and you have this idea. I mean, he's the president. He seems like he's trying to go for peace with this adamantium deal, right? But
Hmm.
then to slowly erode that perception. That was kind of what Gamma Head's idea was, but they went from A to Z and skipped all the other 24 letters.
Right. So I definitely would have added stuff in there. Excuse me. And then like you said, having Gamma Brain like orchestrate different other things. How did he get into the CIA to pay for the theft of whatever? And how did he
Hmm.
send that there? And little tiny things. And again, it doesn't need to be because the movie was, hour and 50 minutes or 2 hours of screen time or whatever. Like it doesn't need to be longer, but if you added little, drops here and there that kind of paint this picture of him being everywhere. And again, the mind control thing, if you explain why certain people are susceptible to it or how it triggers or whatever, other than you're just looking at your phone and next thing you know, you're shooting the prisoners you know, at the jail and then you're killing yourself, like what makes you susceptible? You give someone a plausible reason and then you explain and then it's like, wow, this is incredible.
Hmm.
And so it's little tiny things here and there that would have enhanced it more for me. So I would have explained the mind control thing at some point, and I don't even care when it is, but ideally it would be like when you walk into the prison and you've got the pictures on the wall and Isaiah's one of
Right.
them, and it's like, okay, here's the trigger. This is what happened. This is how he reaches certain people, you know?
Right.
And then you can see, you've got what, 40 pictures on the wall and you're like, "Oh my gosh, he has this many." And then like if you just open a drawer like a file cabinet or something and there's just this huge picture in there and it gives you this dread of like, "Oh my gosh, he's everywhere." Or,
Right.
and then you've got the probability thing that you need to add a little bit more in, like how does he know? And like even a scene where like I don't know, where he's just out walking and or I don't know, doing something. I just imagine him walking and like, he just ducks his head and a sniper shot just hits right behind him. Like something
Right.
like he knows almost exactly what's going to happen.
Right.
And if you show a couple of things like that, it makes him seem a lot more unstoppable. And then you can say, okay, it is plausible that he would give himself up because he knows he can get out,
Right.
you know? But it kind of just felt like, well, you foiled my plan, so I had to turn myself in. It's like, but if he's always on these probability things, like if you do a bit more, you can show that he is actually 12 steps ahead because he can see 12 steps ahead. And then the downfall becomes he misses the step right in front of him that switches because he's so far ahead.
Right.
You know?
I and that's kind of what I wanted, you know. And that's why I say he was a wasted villain because he had this huge potential.
Right.
And I would have liked to see that too, or like have him guiding a sniper shot. You talked about him missing a sniper shot, but how about him guiding a sniper shot and saying, well, in this scenario, there's an 87% chance that he'll step into this location at this time, and the sniper pulls the trigger and you're done.
Right.
Like he nails it type thing. And it does make him seem unstoppable. And I
I
think that's what I missed about it.
Yes, I almost imagine it like he needs to be an amped up version of Limitless. And I can't remember the name. Did you see the movie with
I did, yeah. Who was
what's
it?
his name?
I don't remember his
It
name.
doesn't matter. Limitless, you take the pill and it opens up, unlocks your brain, and you can see all of the possibilities. And they made a series of it. And I just imagine him, because he's a congressman or he's whatever, running for office or something, and someone is trying to kill him, and he looks up there and he can do the probability. If I move my head this far, it misses. If I move it this way, like I'm dead. And
Right,
then if I do it right here, it'll graze my cheek or whatever. And you see those calculations. It would be interesting to get into his head a little bit or have him narrate something like that, like, you know, probability of this happening is this. And you've got all of these calculations, and then you say, pull the trigger now. And the guy steps into the line of wherever, and it seems impossible, but everything happens. And then he gets, sniped. It's like,
Right.
remember going back to Robert Downey Jr., but different movie, Sherlock Holmes, where
Yes.
he has
Yes.
that like, you know, everything slows down. He narrates in his mind what's going to happen, and the probabilities of whatever, and then it speeds up and all the things happen, and boom.
Yep.
I would have liked something like that.
And I think that would have, I mean, it just would have enhanced the villain. It
Right.
wouldn't have been such a waste. So, other than those things, I don't know that I've got anything that I want to reforge.
Right. Again, we really liked the movie. I loved the direction they went. I mean, I think Anthony Mackie did a fantastic job as Sam, and he
Hmm.
does. I mean, again, I'm excited for him as Captain America in the future, you know.
Yes.
To be honest, the only character I cared about really was Spider-Man, and now I'm looking forward to, you know, Anthony Mackie and Captain America again. And for some reason I go back to that interview with Tom Holland and Anthony Mackie, and it was an Avengers thing, and Anthony was like, "Well, I haven't seen any of the Spider-Mans," and Tom Holland was like, I haven't seen any of oh,
Oh,
I haven't
right.
seen any of your movie. Oh, you don't have one. And
But now he does.
but now I'm like, let's get more Captain America again because I like the character.
I do too.
And
I
and
really do too.
I think, again, let's finish on this. The great thing about Sam's Captain America, is the same thing about Spider-Man, is that you can aspire to be your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, right? Someone who is just doing good. He's working hard, using his brain, and there's nothing really innately special about him necessarily. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, yeah, he's really smart. Okay, he's a genius, but you know what I mean. He's not super serumed up. He's not Thor with lightning powers.
The spider does give him powers though.
Okay, whatever. But you know what I
But
mean.
he's not so much Toby Maguire where everything was just given to him.
That's what I
He
mean. Yeah.
is using his intellect to solve these problems.
I mean,
That's what you're talking about.
yes. And he's a normal person. He is a flawed individual. It's the same reason you like Tony Stark, even though he's a D-bag sometimes, is like he is using his brain to be a superhero, to solve problems, to try and do what he thinks is best.
Right.
And you can resonate with that because he wasn't super serumed. He didn't have any magical properties. He isn't some Norse god. He's just a dude trying his best to save the world.
Yep.
And you like that. Same thing with Sam. You need a character like that, someone who is flawed, who isn't, you know, whatever, I guess.
Super serumed.
Super serumed or enhanced in any way. He's just a dude, and I like that in my superhero, I
I
guess.
do too.
So I guess we'll leave it there and be cautiously optimistic about the future of Marvel. Can we say that, or are we
Yeah,
not
I
there
think
yet?
so. I mean, I liked it enough, like you said. I'll watch the next one
Yeah,
when Thunderbolts comes out on Disney Plus in a week. I think it's this week.
yeah,
I'll give it a watch,
right.
and maybe we'll discuss it on one of our next week's episodes. But um, I'm invested enough to at least revisit Marvel.
Right.
So it did its job, apparently.
Apparently it did its job. Enough to where I'm wondering if we need to go back and review some of the post Endgame stuff just to kind of
Get a little bit of a refresh. Get
get a bit of a
a
refresh moving forward, see if we, see if there's anything we can do there. But
Yeah.
anyway, uh, we appreciate all of you guys who are watching. If you've made it this far, please subscribe, like, let us know how, you know, what you would do. If you like this movie, if there are things you would have changed, what have you.
If you want to see our last video talking about how we would change Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, go ahead and click this link above my head. And if you want to check out our channel, click the link above Trev's head.
And that's all we've got. So we will catch you next time.
Later.